We've got a great episode of the Plant Cunning podcast coming your way. We have Todd Elliot, the Cunning farmer, on the show, and I've been waiting to interview him for a while. His book, The Cunning Farmer, is finally out, and I think that all of the listeners will enjoy that book. My book, The Zodiac Garden Guide, is also coming out in early April. By the time you're listening to this, it might already be out, so you can find that online. I'm very excited about this book. I've put a lot into it, and I've been working on it for a long time. So if you're interested in astrological magic, astrological gardening, zodiac gardening, garden magic, any of that kind of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy both The Cunning Farmer and The Zodiac Garden Guide. Also, I would like to let folks know that I am available for Vedic astrology consultations. If you would like to get a reading with me, you can email me at askisaachill@gmail.com. That's ASKISAACHILL@gmail.com. Everyone spells my name wrong for some reason with two S's, but it's two A's, not two S's. So do that if you're interested in a Vedic astrology reading. And without any further ado, here is Todd Elliot, the Cunning Farmer. Today on the Plant Cunning podcast, we are delighted to have Todd Elliot on the show. Todd is a farmer and an author and an occultist, esotericist, magician, the Cunning Farmer to be precise. Just wrote this, The Cunning Farmer book, which is highly anticipated among us plant cunning folks.
Yeah.
Really excited about this book. It's a beautiful book out with inner traditions, and I know this took a long time to write, so congratulations, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's really an honor to be here. And I think I've been communicating with you since some of the very beginnings of the book. And it's great to finally get to sit down and talk with you and to be on the show. I've been listening to the show for years. You've kept me entertained through many projects on my farms, and your guests have been inspiring. I've listened to a couple of the episodes multiple times, and it's really an honor to be here with you guys.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's an honor for us to have you here.
Totally.
I think this is really an accomplishment because, as John Michael Greer says in the foreword, there aren't a lot of people writing books on green magic that are farmers as a vocation. And you
Like
are.
city folk, he says.
Yeah. You've been doing this for decades, and you actually know, you have hands in the dirt and can see the effects of what you're doing too. The first question is always, what brought you to the plant path? So how did you get interested in all this?
Well, I was always, as a kid, I was always wandering in the woods, in the creeks, and in elementary school, I was the kid with the butterfly net catching bugs, which when the other kids were playing football, that didn't really make me very popular, but that's me. And I've always been attracted to nature. As I grew older and moved out of my parents' house, and I went camping every weekend with friends and just got out of the city. I lived in Philadelphia. I just got out of the city as often as I could. And finally, I went with some friends in my early 20s, came down to Kentucky to stay for a week with some friends of one of my friends, my partner, at the time's family, who lived in Kentucky, and we stayed on their homestead in the middle of nowhere on the Cumberland River. And I just met the old hippie community, and I was so inspired that we moved down. We were also inspired. We moved down here the following year, and this was in 1995 and 96. And I'm moving down to Kentucky in the 90s. We had a very little bit of money, so we bought a little piece of land in the woods, and you have to make a living. So we started working with tobacco farmers, and we started apprenticing for free, of course, with a couple local organic farmers. And I tried to our piece of land was wooded, so I started like a forest garden. I cleared a couple places to grow vegetables and medicinal herbs. I planted it was a great place to grow woodland medicinal herbs like ginseng and black cohosh, and all that stuff grew down there. All your stuff that you like to find on the northeastern slope, all those great riparian and woodland herbs, because we're on the river too. But it was hard to make a living that way. So we found a piece of farmland and got in on the beginnings of the CSA movement, and I started growing vegetables in 2001 and I've been growing vegetables ever since. And I grow medicinal herbs, I grow exotic tropicals. I like to make herbal remedies for my family, and I love plants. I've been into them for years. I was
Yeah.
rambling, but
Yeah, in the book you talk about the first plant you grew was a Datura.
yeah, I was reading about ethnobotany, and I had Richard Evans Schultes and Albert Hoffman's Plants of the Gods, and I was reading all about entheogenic plants, which that was also a big part of my introduction to the plant path was entheogenic plants. And I found this Datura growing in a vacant lot, and I dug it up and took it home and carefully planted it in my. It was a Jimson weed, actually, Datura stramonium, and I took it up and planted it in my backyard. And I still love Daturas. I still love Brugmansias. I have a lot of. I grow Datura anoxia here now.
Yeah.
I have some yellow flowered Brugmansias. I love all those baneful plants, but the Jimson weeds, I don't need to plant them. They come up on their own all over the farm. I think it's a little bit insane to try to cultivate one because they're one of, I don't want to say they're noxious because they're relatively easy to control, but they're abundant. Yeah, they're everywhere. And in our compost pile, if I don't turn it regularly, it'll grow 8 to 10 foot tall specimens that are quite lovely and impressive. And then they
Wow.
drop their seeds all over the compost pile, and then they come up all over the fields.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're never any. I see people cultivating them, and I'm like, you don't have to do that if you're an organic farmer. You just have to spread manure.
Especially in Kentucky. They're not quite so aggressive up here. You have to cultivate them with our short growing season. But I remember in Pittsburgh seeing a patch of Datura stramonium in in this old
Abandoned foundation or
right,
something.
yeah, it was this piece of land that was abandoned with the waste field, and they were just so powerful,
Yeah.
especially in the middle of the city. You just see them, you're like, whoa, what is that?
They really have a presence. They're like dark purple stems, and the flowers are lovely, and they have a very faint scent, but they're still perfumed. They're not quite as perfumed as a Datura noxia or Rightii, but they really are beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and we grow the anoxia as well. It's just so beautiful and
It's
good.
intoxicating.
Yeah, intoxicating.
Yeah.
I grew a Rightii last year, and because I've always had anoxias. A lot of people have really beautiful specimen plantings of anoxia around here in Kentucky. It's one of those traditional landscaping plants. You'll see places that people will have a big rambling patch of them, and they're quite beautiful. But I tried to grow a Rightii because their flowers are bigger, and that's the one that has the name Sacred Datura. So I want to try one of them, and I put it in a place that the anoxias come up on their own, and it didn't do well at all. It wasn't as tolerant of the heavy soil that we have here or something. But it wilted, and the anoxias came up from seed that was dropped in the ground, and I let them go, and
Yeah.
they go crazy.
Yeah. So that's the one that the spirits of your particular land like the best.
Besides stramonium, they love stramonium.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Indigenous people here had a history of using stramonium too, prehistory or pre-contact.
Yeah. Did you ever grow metal?
I have grown Datura Mattel, and in my early homesteading days, I haven't gotten a hold of a specimen in a while or bought any seeds. But I had a double flowered purple one that was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I was thinking about trying that this year, but
Nice.
we've got Noxia.
I need to find the seeds, but I had a gentleman, a yoga practitioner at the farmer's market give me some seeds for some yellow flowered ones. I need to find them. They're somewhere around here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I guess they have some use in Hindu religious devotions, perhaps to Shiva. There's famous pictures of Shiva with him holding a Datura Mattel flower in his hands.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a sacred plant there as well.
Yeah.
So we got off on a little Datura.
Start off with the plants. Yeah.
Yeah. But so in your journey as a farmer and as a magician, like who are some of your main teachers, mentors, guides?
As a farmer, one of the fellows that wrote the blurb on the back of the book, Jeff Poppin, is one of my earliest farming teachers. I spoke. He does a biodynamic farming conference every fall, and I spoke at that conference in October. I plan to speak there again this October. But he's one of my oldest friends. One of my neighbors was a person named Chris Caro, a guy named Chris Caro, and he taught me how to farm too. Also, some local tobacco farmers. In terms of books. Oh gosh, I used to love Liberty Hyde Bailey, who was also a New York a professor of horticulture at Cornell back in the early 20th century. His books are great. As far as esotericism, we all love John Michael Greer. He's pretty awesome. I love the Picatrix is probably my favorite grimoire. Uh, Gosh, influences. I love all the various grimoires that have been put out by Stephen Skinner and David Rankin and all those guys. I draw inspiration, but I'm not a strict practitioner of those methods. I love the Greek magical papyri. I love the Orphic hymns. I'm pretty eclectic. I love one of my favorite series of books on magic are the ones by Jacobus Swart. They're the Book of Sacred Names. He does a bunch of stuff on practical Kabbalah, which amulets and talismans, using divine names and angelic names. I think that stuff's pretty cool. I make big use of that in my magical practice. I also some of the let's see. I like Robin Artisan's works for as far as traditional witchcraft. I like Chemagari. I really think traditional witchcraft is cool because it involves relationships with spirits of the land. And it's also a good container for, I like that it blends, grimoire occultism with a sort of a land-based approach to magic. I think that it's a good container for what I do. I don't really use the word witch to describe myself, though, but I do draw inspiration from those authors. Let's see.
You also said you're a student of Chris Warnock, right?
Yeah, Chris Warnock's awesome, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. A broad question. Yes, Chris.
Yeah.
Books and his teachings are very inspirational to me. His approach. I love Henry Cornelius Agrippa. As you guys know, when you take the astrological magic course, you get a hold of a copy of the 3 books of occult philosophy. And I'd never read that before I took that course. And it is an amazing influence on my practice. Platonism in general, Iamblichus, Plotinus, that kind of stuff. Hermeticism, the Corpus Hermeticum is also a major influence on my worldview. Traditional Renaissance Hermeticism. Yeah, I love all that stuff. I'm super eclectic.
Yeah. Yeah. So you wouldn't call yourself a witch. So what would you call yourself? What are you, a cunning farmer?
Yeah, I think cunning man sounds highfalutin, but that magician is okay. Yeah. Cunning man. Yeah. I don't know. That's, like I said, it sounds a little highfalutin. I don't want to take it, but I am definitely inspired by the tradition of the cunning folk tradition of the British Isles. I think they managed to combine an approach that deals with spirits of the dead in the underworld, earth's spirits, folk magic, with astrological magic and with angel magic. And that's what I do too. Combine all those 4 realms. And I talk about that in the book, The 4 Realms. Agrippa talks about the 3 books of occult philosophy. And then he puts out the 4th one where he discusses nature spirits and spirits of the ancestors and stuff like that. And I think that's what I'm getting at too, the 4 realms, the magic of the 4 realms. And I'm a magical generalist rather than an expert on one particular field. I try to be somewhat versed in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I like that. Me too, to a certain degree. I also like to dig into some things, like with the Vedic astrology and so on, but it's good to have a broad view because there's so many different strains and so many different traditions. And I think that also, if you look at the history of magic, it is eclectic and it is synergistic and syncretic.
Yeah. I also am a giant astrology nerd as well. I really admire the fact that you went to India to get training in traditional Vedic astrology. I haven't dipped my toe in the Vedic pond yet, but I do love traditional astrology and I get on big kicks about it sometimes. My Substack, I publish mundane astrology forecasts, just such as they are, and I do also do private reading for people. Love that as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Todd, when you first started farming on your land in Kentucky and you're growing all these plants in the forest, and then you started growing in the fields and everything, were you aware of like land spirits and spirits of place and that kind of stuff? Or like what awoken you to that realm?
I was always into magic and esotericism from the time I was in my late teens.
Cool.
There wasn't so much of a consciousness about that in the occult community. The occultism that I was exposed to was lodge magic.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think there was as much talk about land spirits. So I moved down to Kentucky and I got interested in ethnobotany, and the farming took over my life in a way.
Yeah.
And I think it was when I got back into it again and I started dipping my toe back into what people are talking about in the last decade, which is a lot more talk about land spirits, a lot more talk about plant spirits, and the occult renaissance of the last 10 years or so has really dived deep into that territory, and that was what influenced me to get into that myself. I was already working with plants, I was already working on the land,
Yeah.
but it hadn't honestly occurred to me. I also followed Wicca as a young person, and to celebrate the Wheel of the Year with rituals that had occurred to me, but to actually sit down and talk to the plants and to the spirits of the land that I lived on had not until the last 8 or so years.
Cool.
Now it's become a big part of what I do.
Mm.
I mean, we're really isolated from the esoteric community here in northern Kentucky. And I lived in South Central Kentucky, was even more isolated there. So I didn't know anybody.
Mm.
I didn't actually have the internet until 2006,
Okay.
and didn't have good internet until, oh, I don't know, not that long ago, within the last dozen years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was also like during that time you were like really diving deep into farming as your main vocation.
And farming is very all-encompassing. I think I read every book I could get on like soil science, crop rotation. I really loved late 19th and early 20th century textbooks of agriculture because I felt like people had a sustainable agriculture system that got abandoned after
Yeah.
World War II when people started adopting industrial chemicals on a large scale. Basically, they started using war chemicals like nitrate fertilizers, which are used for explosives, and nerve poisons, which were used in making nerve gases on nature. And
Yeah.
that's when I think agriculture started to go downhill. Not to get off on that tangent, but I really believed, and I still believe, that people used to know there were a lot of good farmers prior.
Yeah.
There still are a lot of good farmers. They've never gone away, but there was a lot of good farming and it was more widespread. People really took care of their land as if they wanted to stay there for their whole lives. We also, unfortunately, in the United States had a frontier mentality where we would, since they were taking land from indigenous people and opening up new land to settlers, they would wear out a farm and move on west to a new piece of land to wear out and move on west. And so in the United States, but at the same time, there were farmers who wanted to have a multi-generational farm in the same place and treat the land with respect and use manures and use long crop rotations and not overstock and not overgraze and not wear out the soil. And those were the people that I emulated in my farming practice, especially I still do. Yeah, those are the people I drew inspiration from.
And then there's like the next level of instead of just wearing out a land and moving on and wanting to stay there, then there's the next level of seeing the land as alive and seeing the inhabitants of that land as having living spirit and autonomy.
And that's where we are now. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the shortfalls of sustainable agriculture is that it doesn't treat the earth as sacred. There are people that do. And actually, I said this to Cooper and his partner Ian on the podcast the other night, and actually they're like the one young fella, Ian, he said that he had been on several farms where they incorporated harvest and planting ceremonies into their practice. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That's so great. That's where we need to go. We need to start treating the earth as sacred with rituals and ceremonies and acknowledging it out in public that we believe the earth is our mother and that we are part of a sacred web of life.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that is also, if you look just across the world and back into the European worldview, like that was standard. Like it was standard to respect because you're stuck on that piece of land. Like a lot of people, like they lived in that same village for generations and generations. So you have to have a deep respect for that land to be able to be in relationship with it that long.
Yeah, they had a permanent agriculture that was supposed to last for thousands of years. Yeah.
They did. They actually did. And that's the other thing I sometimes with the permaculture, it's like some people say it's all taken from indigenous people or all just created by Bill Mollison. And it's like the Europeans in the 1700s and 1800s couldn't have been practicing a permanent agriculture, but they were actually. There were a lot of like coppicing and rotation and all sorts of things that were being utilized
Yeah.
in, yeah. And it was, like you said, this post World War II where it went completely nuts.
Yeah, well, the old like in Great Britain, when a farmer would enter into a tenancy agreement with the landowner, oftentimes there was a stipulation in the contract that the only things you could remove from the farm had to walk out on their own hooves. Like you could take animals off the farm. But you couldn't take hay and you couldn't take any form of organic matter on some farms, but you could take animals off. Everything else had to stay within the farm. And that was a way of protecting the soil. Nowadays, we routinely sell the hay off the farm, but in those days,
Yeah.
you would keep the hay on the farm, you would feed it to the stock, you'd spread the manure back on the land, you would grow the crops to feed the animals, and it was all, and the only thing would walk off on its own two hooves, and so therefore you're not removing any organic matter from the farm.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
sure
think
several farms were different, but stock farms were like that.
Yeah, and there's specialization too. But I think what you also hit the nail on the head with it's like that settler mentality of the U.S. then got exported across the world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the idea that you get fertility out of a bag instead of from the land itself.
Yeah. And that's that chemical. It's the same thing with the pharmaceutical industry, where you get health from a pill and you get fertility from a bag of chemicals. It's the
And
same mentality.
yeah, and you can't separate the health from the health of the land and from the quality of the food that you eat either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is also gratifying to hear that like in my experience in the alternative agriculture scene over the last whatever 15, 20 years, I do see a lot of ritual and ceremony coming back into it. And they're on a leader level, and a lot of writers and people who are very serious about their regenerative agriculture or their permaculture, they're very scientific. They kind of like poo that end of things. But on an actual like local level and on a population level, people who are actually practicing permaculture and regenerative agriculture, I think, are bringing these practices into it.
That's really heartening to hear.
Yeah, singing to the seedlings and having
Yeah.
like garlic planting parties where your whole community comes out and blesses the land, like our friends at Clow Valley in
Yeah,
West
we
Valley.
actually have a garlic harvest party
Nice.
where we do that too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to start doing more of that. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I raise corn here. I raise a land race kind of corn, and I can't always get it all harvested.
Yeah.
It's a big job to harvest corn by hand. I would really love to have a corn harvest party at some point.
Definitely.
Like we have the garlic harvest party in June around the solstice. We could have a corn
Mm.
harvest party around the equinox. Really cool.
People are hungry for that. Literally, they want to get their hands on the corn. So definitely do that.
Yeah. Oh, I love. There's nothing like. I have a grist mill, a stone with stone burrs.
Yeah.
Grind the cornmeal, and there's nothing like it. It's amazing.
So good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to at some point be doing that. Because corn really is such an amazing plant,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I love it. I like to go sit in my corn patch at night in the summertime and hear it grow. I don't know,
Yes.
like a moonlit night. I have a little chair that I keep out there and just sit out in the corn patch and talk to the spirits and the stars and the land, and I just love it. I probably stay up too late doing that sometimes when I ought to go to bed.
That's a great way to spend your evenings. Love that.
Like corn is just such a powerful plant that I think it takes a while. It's like we get familiarized to it. It's just in the product. Corn is in everything, and like when you drive down in the rural areas, there's just corn everywhere. You just take it for granted, but you think about how fast that plant grows and how many calories it can create. It's magical. It's mind-boggling, really.
And it's a gift from the indigenous people of the Americas. I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely co-opted, and it makes me sad to see the corn landscape. I drove up to Central Ohio to Columbus area and Newark last week with my wife to see the Newark, the Native American sacred sites around Newark, Ohio, the Earth Circle and the Newark Octagon, which is fantastic. I recommend it to you. It's one of North America's premier sacred sites, and it's beautiful. It's awe-inspiring. The Octagon and the circle next to the Octagon was a golf course, but the other one was. Anyway, I digress. I'll get to that later. But we drove through miles of corn and soybean production land, and there were farmhouses spaced here and there that were in states of disrepair, and you could
Totally.
the economy was not doing great in those places. Some people were still living in the houses, but you could also tell that there was these abandoned outbuildings where they used to keep livestock, and there was abandoned barn, and somebody would be living in the house. There'd be a truck or two parked outside, but there was no livestock. We drove for 100 miles or something through that territory and didn't see a cow.
Wow.
Nothing but corn and soybeans and massive grain bins interspersed by sprawling towns and not a cow. And around here, there's a lot of industrial corn grown as well. And I just think about it in the same land in the bottom land below us here on the ridge where I live, in the same land where the native people used to carefully tend their corn crops, there's corn growing and it's unloved, uncared for, genetically modified, sprayed with chemicals, and just treated like an industrial commodity instead of a loved object as it should be. Nobody's thanking the corn mother for the harvest. Nobody's singing to the corn as it grows. Nobody's doing ceremonies to mark the different stages of its growth. They're just planting it, spraying the ground, working the ground, spraying the ground, planting with a giant machine that plants, 30 rows at once or something like that. And then coming back with a harvester that harvests 30 rows at once, and then selling it to make it into gasoline or God knows what, corn syrup.
Yeah. Or fodder for the cows that are not on the land because they're in big buildings all overcrowded.
Yeah. It's the state of American agriculture today is really sad, and
Heart-wrenching.
yeah, it is. And the rural communities aren't doing well either. And I think it's a direct consequence of the way we treat the earth that rural communities aren't doing well. I think if we had a happy earth, we'd have happier rural communities.
Yeah, it's when you're in a place where there's just corn from horizon to horizon, there's no diversity, there's no animals, there's no other plants, and then it's being sprayed, and it is so disheartening, and there's a spiritual malaise involved with that.
For sure.
Definitely. I mean, in Kentucky, we don't, at least in my part of the state, in some part of the states, it's as flat as it is in Indiana, Ohio. But in my part of the state, it's really hilly and rolling, and we don't have the thousands of acre corn farms here. A farmer might. There was a grain farmer here a few years ago that he did a little bit of everything. He had, I think it was 700 acres of grain, but he had to drive his planter and his combine. Anyway, it was a lot more diverse. It has to be a lot more diversified here because of the land. So so it's not quite as monoculture here as it is in other places.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar here too because we're in the foothills and there can't be just acres and acres of corn except for in floodplains and some places like that. There's a lot, but and that's part of why I love it here too. There's forests.
We raise this open pollinated corn, and we don't have corn anymore. We did a few years ago, but we don't have corn within miles of us. I guess there is some on the bottom, probably about a mile away, but that's the closest. We're surrounded by woods, which is a different problem. You don't get cross-pollination from GMOs. You get every kind of animal that wants to eat your corn.
Yeah, that is the other thing too with growing corn. That's one of the reasons, like when I have grown corn here before, it has gotten pollinated by neighbors' corn. So
yeah,
it's a little bit, it's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But the CSA model is giving us a burst of hope into the agricultural scene, seeing people do production farming that's like diverse and feeding their neighbors, and then neighbors pitching into the farmers early on in the season. So I feel like there are some old dairy farms and old corn farms around here where younger people are coming in and starting like a homestead model where they're bringing in chickens and goats or cows and animals and growing small patches of veggies and Yeah, so there is a shift where people are realizing that like the mega farm monoculture is not working.
Yeah, it's definitely the CSA model is what sustains our household too. It's really great. And I've been doing the CSA since 2001.
That's awesome.
That's
That's,
great.
that's a quarter century of CSA.
Wow. It's so cool.
The other thing around here, though, is that there are a lot of Amish people, and they have a different kind of relationship with the land. Like they are a lot more integrated, and they have a variety, a diversity in their crops, but they do have this exploitative mentality.
You actually said in the book, like some of your neighbors point blank told you that they think that all of nature is for us. Like God gave us nature to give to us. And that's exactly how the Amish around us have described it to
It's
us.
in the
Yeah.
Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's in the Bible.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people think that it wasn't, but yeah, I think I was talking to her about this was years and years ago, not even a place where I live now, but I was talking to her about environmentalism or something like that, and she's like, God gave us the land to do what the plants and the animals to do with what we want in the land, and I was like, that is not how I see it.
Yeah. It's very different worldview.
It shows why the worldview is so important.
Mm.
And in this book, in your book, you go through a lot of it is worldview. You're creating this worldview and drawing on all of these
You
ideas.
nailed it. You nailed it. It's a worldview.
So can
And
you explain the worldview to us?
do you remember you've taken Chris's courses too, and you remember the first couple lessons of Chris's course is always the worldview.
Yeah.
And I was really inspired by that because I think the worldview, the way of seeing the world, we have to change that. We have to change our programming, our like source code or whatever, on the basic
Mhm.
level. We have to see the world as sacred. We have to see ourselves as part of a web of life that goes from the ancestors that are in underneath our feet in the
Mhm.
past, but still with us, to the elemental spirits and the nature spirits that are around us, to the celestial spirits, the planets and the stars that we work with as astrologers and astrological magicians, to the celestial, super celestial spirits, to the forces of creation itself. I think it's essential that we fundamentally change the way we see the world and see. I try to give I try to give a worldview. As astrologers, in order to even explain how astrology or magic works, we have to change our worldview. How can any of that work if everything isn't connected? If we aren't part of one, I don't know if you can see my shirt here. I've got Rob
Mm.
Flood,
Yeah.
Anima Mundi, the Mirror of Art and Nature here. But you can see that everything's connected, right?
Yeah.
World Soul connects everything from the level of the elements and the rocks and the soil and the underworld to the source, to the creator. And that's what we've got to put in our minds first, that everything comes from the source and the creator down. Spatial metaphors are inadequate. You could just as easily say from within as you could say from above, but it comes from the source to into manifestation into the material world, and everything is connected by what they call the logos, by what they call the reason, the world, the intelligence of all things that connects all things. I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but it's a hard thing to put into words on the spot. I'm a much better writer than I'm a speaker on this.
Yeah. But you did great.
Yeah.
And one of the core structures of the conceptual model, I guess, is this four-part cosmos. And you described that previously, but could you go into a little bit more into detail about that four-part cosmos?
Sure. As I said, I think that I, as a magical practitioner and a farmer and a land worker, I feel like I feel like it's important to me to be able to work with those four worlds, to be able to connect with the world of the ancestors, the people who have dwelt on my land before me, and my past, my ancestors of blood, my family, the spirits of my family that have gone before me. I feel like that's really meaningful and important to me to be at peace and to work with them and to send healing to them and also healing to the people that have worked this land before. I feel like there's been a lot of trauma here. I know a little bit about the history of the place that I live on, and it was from the 1780s to the early 19th century to about 1810 or the time of Tecumseh. There was a war of genocide fought here to remove the native people from the land. This was a very dangerous place to be for whatever kind of person you were, and I think the land remembers that. And before that even, there were people living on the river bottoms here and on the hunting on the ridges and living in villages on the river bottoms that belonged to the Mississippian culture, and they were wiped out by the epidemics that swept across North America, to the extent that when the French explorers came back, there was no one here.
Wow.
And there was no trace except for the mounds, but they found the land full of mounds. Other than so there was a trace, but there were no people. It was the Shawnee hunted here, the Cherokee hunted here. It appeared to be empty, but it was a hunting ground for people that lived in adjacent territories. I don't know if there was too much resident populations in Kentucky. So because they were wiped out in the 1500s by the epidemics. So there's that legacy of trauma this was a county that had slavery. Although Kentucky was a border state, it was also sided with the Union. It was also a slave state, and my county had a lot of slaves. Some counties in Kentucky didn't have very many and tended to side with the Union, but my county and in northern Kentucky, there was lots of large farms, and so there was slavery here. So we have that legacy of enslaved peoples. So we got to make peace with that like suffering in our land. And so that's the underworld element, the past here. And then there's the nature spirits, the spirits of the trees and the plants and the weather. And I feel like it's important to be able to communicate with those as well. I don't think there's a sharp separation between the layers. I think there's probably some crossover. But for me, I see in our magical tradition that there's rain magic in all kinds of magical traditions. There's weather magic. Yeah. There's magic to help the crops grow. There's all this working with elementals and land spirits. And I think it's especially important for farmers to be versed in that. I think astrological magic, because I think the moon and the planets and the signs and the movements of the planets and the moon through the signs send energies of some kind to the earth. I'm not sure whether I believe in the rays model or the spirits model. It almost doesn't matter whether you believe.
Right, or it's both.
Both, yeah. But I think that there's, what the Arabic astrologers call ruhaniyat, the celestial spirits that come down to us and influence our lives here on a formative level, on a thematic level. I think working with them so we can channel beneficial energies into our lives and into our crops is very helpful. And then I think angelic magic is an important part of my practice as well. A lot of times when I need practical things and can't wait for an election, because astrological magic is very heavily involved in finding the right moment. Sometimes I feel like angels are a little beyond that. You can use planetary timing for that too. Planetary hours and days is helpful for them too, but that's a lot easier to plan than finding when all the things you have to have for a good election for planetary magic, the planet in exaltation or rulership and rising or culminating in the planetary hour and all the things, not getting any bad aspects from malefic. Sometimes it's really hard to get that lined up.
Yeah.
And what is the moon doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So angelic magic is important. I think healing magic is important too. I talk about healing practices in there, energy healing.
Yeah.
So I think it's on all four levels. I think energy healing probably falls into a couple of the different categories.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's so much I want to talk about, but that is one of those things is the energy healing and working with Reiki with your crops. So what was that process like of learning Reiki, and how did the crops react?
I learned Reiki because I tell the story in the book because for one thing, because of COVID and to just help make us a little more healthy and more resistant, but also, and because of my family, I don't know if it was COVID. I was one of the first people to have a really bad respiratory illness in 2020 in the state of Kentucky. I got some horrible pneumonia brought on by a virus, and they didn't even have COVID tests at the time. So that was really scary. So that was one of my major, and then my wife actually got Rocky Mountain spotted fever the same year.
Oh
So
no.
that's one of the things where we talk about astrology, where it's not always a physical cause.
Right.
No, we both had severe illnesses that year, and it might not have, in the year when everybody got COVID, lots of people got COVID. I might have just had influenza, a really bad case of the flu that gave me pneumonia, put me in the hospital, and she had a really severe case of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. It was just our time.
Yeah.
Sickness was in the air, right?
Yeah.
In the cosmos at the time. And so that was one of the, and my dad his health was failing at the time, and I wanted to be able to send energy to him. So I got into Reiki. I got initiated into the 3 levels of Reiki. And then the Reiki teacher was like, you can use this on anything. You can use this on
Yeah.
plants. You can Reiki your food before you eat it. And I tried it in the garden, and it seems to help a lot. I feel like plants really respond to energy. I think just going in there, and if you have an ailing plant and just trying to intentionally send it energy, and there's other energy healing modalities too, other than Reiki. We talked about this one time, the one that John Michael Greer teaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Seen healing hands.
yeah, I've seen Healing Hands. It was really similar. I looked into that, and it was very much a lot like Reiki
Yeah.
in essence. And so I would walk through the fields broadcasting Reiki with my hands, making the symbols over the crops and broadcasting with my hands and chanting the mantras while I walk through there. And it would calm me down, and it would give me a feeling of relaxation. And if I was having like aches and pains, it would make them feel better, and it would
Hmm.
make the plants feel better too. And it was just a really wonderful little ritual to do. I try to do it when no one's around because you look weird. But to walk through the garden, up and down the rows, sometimes at night, but sometimes in the daytime, just like intending energy to come out of my hands to the plants that helps them heal and helps them grow is a really positive experience. And I don't have to use as many organic pesticides as I used to. I still have to use some. We grow broccoli and cabbage in the summertime, and
Those are tough.
those are tough. It's hard to keep
Yeah.
the worms off of them. But
I don't
potatoes,
even try growing broccoli and cabbage anymore. We just
yeah.
let the professional
We let the
veggie
professional
farmers do
veggie
it.
farmers, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys can do it.
Yeah,
Forgiving.
yeah, the worms are really the little cabbage butterfly larvae
Yeah.
are really bad. But we have
Mhm.
to produce stuff that people eat, so I can't let those
For
guys get.
sure.
They're gonna
No, you're
when
doing
you
great.
cook your broccoli and they float up to the top. But there are some pretty non-toxic biological things that you can do to control them. Anyway, but potatoes have been a really good success story for I do that to them, and we almost never have to spray for the potato beetles.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, and they really respond to healthy soil and crop rotation and good intentions. But whatever I do, I try to do it on a physical level and on an energy level as well.
Yeah, I like to Reiki the seedlings as we're growing them, especially. I feel like
Yes.
very quickly.
Oh,
Kind of
yes.
tell.
We have seedlings started right now, and I've already done that to them and to the seeds before you start them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
totally.
Yeah, and so for the seedlings and everything, what is your process for timing? Do you use the moons? How precise do you get with the timing? That
You
was
know,
too
feelings
sorry.
inside, I use the Almanac.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
I use the tropical lunar signs, and I want it to be in a fertile sign. I want it to be, if I'm starting seedlings in the greenhouse, I want it to be waxing. I'm not because I've been farming for a long time, since 1998 basically. I'm not such a purist about it because there's a lot of times when weather makes it impossible to follow
Yeah,
the almanac.
yeah.
For instance, tomorrow the moon's going to be in Gemini. It's going to be about 50 degrees here. It's going to be warm enough to spend the day on the tractor, and but it's going to shift over into Cancer late or early in the morning on Thursday. I might have to plant those seeds a few hours before the moon goes into Cancer because
Mhm.
it's supposed to rain. We're supposed to get a heavy rain
Yeah.
and then more rain 2 days from now, and it's time.
Huh.
It's time to get some carrots and some beets and some things and it's also not a waning moon. I'd much rather plant those things in a waning moon, but it's time. and I might not get back to it for 3 weeks. There's really, in the springtime,
Yeah.
planting windows are limited, so I can't be that strict, but I do try to think of it. But in the greenhouse, we can be a lot stricter, and it does help you organize your time. And it's the same thing with cultivation and operations to control weeds. I would really like to pull weeds and chop out when the moon is in Aries, a waning moon's in Aries. That's a great time. In fact, one of my old timer neighbors, he couldn't remember what sign it was, but he said his great grandfather would mark the days on the calendar, mark a certain day on the calendar, and pull up and girdle trees and kill witches and whenever it was, but he couldn't remember what sign it was. And I said, that's probably when the moon was waning in Aries.
Totally.
Do that because he said it was better than spraying; it would just die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can't follow the almanac and the celestial happenings, do you do a little extra Reiki, a little extra prayer and
Totally.
offerings, things like that?
I'm pretty superstitious about major plantings, though. I won't do them. If we have to set out like 2,000 seedlings, which is a major undertaking, I will not do that in a bad sign.
Okay.
Um,
That's fair.
There are so many more considerations, though. Like the deeper you want to get into electional astrology and planting, you can get as deep into it as you do with talismans. I've read sources that say you want to have the fertile sign rising and the ruler of that sign dignified and a beneficial aspect between the moon and a benefic and all this really complicated electional stuff, which I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to schedule that on the farm.
So I just finished my Zodiac Garden Guide book, and I did a deep dive into electional astrology in the Western tradition and the Vedic tradition. And I tried to find some perfect elections, and I found maybe 2 in 5 years.
Yeah, or it's hard to follow that stuff. I really think the elemental level, like the actual physical world and its weather, trump everything. And
Right. Yeah. And you do what you can within that context, but timing is timing, and the weather and really determines the right time to plant.
yeah,
So if you can get it aligned, great. But if you can't, you still have to get that stuff in the ground.
exactly. But I really like eclipses is a no-go. I'm a little iffy about we had to start the seedlings between the eclipses but absolutely the day of the eclipse is a no-go,
Right.
Yeah.
obviously. But for killing stuff, weeds, and like a day when the sun is out and the wind is blowing and it's 90 degrees, whether it's a fertile sign and it's going to be 90 degrees for about 4 days, stuff's going to die.
Yeah.
You want to do your cultivating or your weeding and throw the weeds on top of the ground. They're going to be dry by the afternoon. And you definitely don't want to plant out seedlings then. I
Yeah.
find that seeds will wait until the proper time. You could put out seeds. If I have to plant seeds tomorrow, they will receive the beneficial radiation or the beneficial rays from the moon in Cancer. And when the moon comes through Cancer,
True.
regardless of whether I planted them like 6 hours ahead of time or not.
That makes me feel good. I like to think about that. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
100%.
And like what I like to do too with the more in-depth elections is I'll mark those and I'll plant like an important tree or something that like I think like a tree has a really long life.
Yeah.
So it's important to plant that at a more precise time, whereas your crop every year is also very important because it's your livelihood.
Yeah.
But it is only at one season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. A tree endures for years. That's a good point. If you want to concentrate your more complicated elections on that, that's a great idea. Or maybe there's people that use the lunar mansions for planting. I like that too. Maybe the 25th lunar mansion would be a great time to plant a tree, since its talisman is the man planting a tree.
Yeah, I'm also doing the nakshatras, the Vedic
Lunar
mansions. And there's some good timing too, and when everything overlaps, that's like even.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have a structural framework or it gives you a way to organize your time as well and organize your activities.
Definitely, definitely.
So can you tell us a little bit about your talisman making experiences?
Yeah, I love making talismans. I haven't experimented with the nakshatras or with the sidereal mansions, but I've had some good success with I could probably show them to you, with the tropical mansions. I made one for a friend who I don't want to give too many details, but he is involved in a nationwide competition I made a 16th Lunar Mansion Talisman for him, and he has won the world championship like 5 times.
Wow.
Wow.
And the first time was after I made him the talisman, and he takes it with him and keeps it in his pocket when he's competing. And I don't know. I haven't, like I said, I haven't experimented with the nakshatras or with the sidereal mansions, but that was the tropical mansion, and that was an amazing success. And it could have been just mean that I picked a good horse too. He's a competent guy and driven, but I like to think the magic helps him out a little. He
Definitely.
thinks,
Yeah. The magic also, it's like you got to you got to have a good horse before first.
yeah, exactly. You got to make material avenues for manifestations. We talked before we started recording, I think, about Jupiter and my chart, and I heard you say that on a clip the other day about working with Jupiter as a wealth talisman. I've done a bunch of Jupiter talismans with my not so great Jupiter, but Jupiter is my Almutant Figuris. And I feel like I still have to work with Jupiter, even though I have Jupiter in Capricorn. I feel like I need to cultivate Jupiter because of its relationship to it's being my. I mean, for Figuris is an elusive concept, but I feel like it's a planet that you need to work with, even though it's a planet that doesn't come easy to you.
This book is you working with Jupiter, right?
Yeah, totally. So I've made
I should
Jupiter.
lift that with one hand, Isaac. It's a heavy
Been doing
book.
my
Yeah.
I'm gonna lift some weights.
Exactly.
But so you've also done agricultural talismans too, right?
Yeah, I've done the 25th Lunar Mansion Talisman for sure. That's probably the primary one that I've done. I've done a Saturn Talisman. It was to keep my place safe in general, to just be a warding talisman. I've done, but probably the primary agricultural talisman has been the 25th Lunar Mansion Talisman, and I've done those a couple times when the election comes up. I think that's a good one. I made it on applewood.
Uh-huh.
I actually now have a fig that it died back to the ground as figs do, and it made a trunk about that thick. So
Cool.
I'm going to cut it up and make like the Picatrix says to use fig wood. So I'm going to try to burn that or engrave that image of the man planting a tree into that.
I also would like to get into your work with the land spirits too.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about too.
So how was that process of, because you said like it wasn't until about 8 years ago that you started working with the land spirits. How was that process of learning how to work with the land spirits and getting to know them?
I started making offerings at places that I consider sacred sites on and around my land. Here, some of them are on other people's property, but they're just right close to my next door neighbors' places. And I would go out and bring cornmeal and tobacco because I really feel like our land spirits here, because this is America and this is North America, and people have offered cornmeal and tobacco to land spirits here for millennia, and I think that's what they like. And I also have offered wine and beer and milk and things like that. I think they just like offerings.
Yeah, handy. It's fine.
Oh, totally. Or like Jason Miller's, what is it? What does he call it? He has a ritual in one of his books where you like make offerings to all the spirits. What did he call it? Oh, it's a good one. I've had crazy things happen after that one where I went out in my backyard and I offered beer, and then you like in your mind you picture it being whatever the spirits want. And I had crazy things happen. I had the coyote stuff. I always have animals answer me when I'm doing rituals outside. Always owls, coyotes, a bull, a deer will show up. An owl will land in a tree. A screech owl land in a tree over top of me and start calling. Just wild stuff happens. But I did his ritual. What does he call it? I wish I could remember. I'd have to look it up in the book, and that would slow us down here. But he has a great ritual of giving offerings to all the spirits to make peace with all the spirits. And I've done that a couple times. And one night after I did it, I went to bed and I had a dream. This wasn't a land spirit. This was a goddess. But I had a dream where a man from India, an Indian man from India came to me, and he gave me a mantra. And I looked it up, and it was one of the Kali mantras.
I just got chills. Whoa.
I know. And I did it a few times. I did a mala citing that mantra a few times. And it was really powerful, and I got a lot of really strong energy. But then I thought to myself, is this my goddess? Is this because the spirit comes to me in a dream and tells me to do something? Is this really the direction I want to go with my life? And I decided it wasn't exactly where I wanted to go, but it was a super positive, powerful result from the practice. And
Totally.
the spirit was like, could hear my call and came to me. So that was really interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have different significations for different animals that come to you, like the coyote versus the deer and
Hawk.
the hawk?
I think the coyote, I work with Hecate sometimes. I think the coyote has its own mythology in North America as being a trickster spirit, and I definitely think that too, but it's also a dog. So there's been times when I've been calling on Hecate out on the moonlit night, and then the coyotes will answer me, and I feel like that's an epiphany for sure.
Yeah.
I've worked with one night I was calling on like Artemis, Diana of as a goddess of the forest, and the screech owl came and lit in the tree and started calling. I actually had my phone and I managed to catch a recording of that. That was pretty wild.
Any thoughts on foxes? I was listening to a fox call last night with a friend and it
Oh my
was,
God, I love them.
yeah, it was
I've only
creepy as
heard
heck.
I've only heard them a couple times,
Yeah.
and it's so eerie. And my name is Todd, of course. That's actually my nickname, which means fox.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I feel like I wish I could see more of them because I feel a connection with them. I've seen them once in a while, but here
They're
I've only
awesome.
heard them geckering once. That was really intense. But the owls are a big thing. We always have screech owls here, and the owls. I've had very spooky experiences with them. Where one night last fall, I was walking around. It was like a warm night. The moon was out, and my deer fences started failing last year, which can get to my relationship with deer and with Carnunos as well. But I was working, I was the owl call. I was walking down towards the woods to shoo some deer away, clapping
Yeah.
my hands at them, and
Mm.
Screech Owl answered me, and I just said, "Hail, dark goddess," and it kept going, and I was like, "Thank you," and I bowed to it, and I walked back to my main garden, and the wind picked up, and I could just feel it like wrap around me like a warm
Wow.
presence. And I
Oh,
felt very strongly that I wasn't alone, and I
yeah.
felt caressed by the wind, and I don't want to say, but it was like almost sexy or something like that. It was weird. And I went back home and I was like, what was that? I tried to analyze which spirit that was, whether it was a jinn or a wind spirit or a goddess or
Mm.
something or a land spirit. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it was the combination of the emotional feeling, the physical feeling of being like touched by the wind on this warm night, and
Mhm.
the owl call
Yeah.
all combined together.
Mm.
And I couldn't quite piece together what it was, but it was very special, very sacred.
Mm. And what about the deer for you?
So the deer, they're one of my major pests here on the farm
Yeah.
agriculturally. And they haven't always been, but last year they got crazy on me. I have electric deer fences. I have to have electric fences around my gardens, otherwise the deer will get in. And they've gotten into disrepair as I've gotten busier. I'm working. In fact, that's my project for this afternoon is to go out and keep working on the deer fence.
That's a good thing to do in this eclipse window.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I've got to keep them out of the garden there. But so I went down to, I have a white oak tree where I do rituals. And I've got a little stone altar there and I leave offerings there. I light candles when it's not too windy and it's not too dry. And I have a
Mm.
little chair in there that I sit underneath there. And one night I was sitting there and I called Carnunos. I just started chanting his name over and over again. I did an impromptu like poem or prayer, like a ad lib, and it wasn't very long before this, I think it was a buck, a large deer starts stomping through the woods, stops about 30 feet from me, and just, you know how they do, and
Yeah.
crap out of me. He was
Yeah.
big and loud. It really, my heart jumped up to my throat, and I was like, thank you. You heard me. And I've done other work where I've prayed to him to tell his people to leave my crops alone. He's a big God for me important God to me because I think he is one of the spirits here that has some, I don't know, obviously it's hard to say whether it's the same God, but there are figures found all over the world of antler-headed divinities from caves in France. The famous sorcerer of Oh God. Found this famous cave painting in France. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think so.
He's called the Sorcerer of Werewolf Cave. Anyway, it's not coming to me. But also, there's a wooden mask from the Spiro Mound in Oklahoma of an antler-headed figure. There was a wooden copper antler headdress that was found in a Hopewell culture mound not too far from here in Ohio. So I think the antler-headed divinity and shamans connecting to the deer spirit, the animal master, the hunting master, taking antler form is also a thing in North America as well. So Cernunnos is a big deity for me, and I feel like he might have some sway with the deer. So after I did this practice to get the deer to leave my stuff alone for a little while, they did back up off for a little while, but they came back in the fall when I was pretty much done with the garden and they went into rut. They came back in a big way and
Yeah.
left. But it was after I didn't really need the crops anymore, and they weren't,
Okay.
to be honest with you, they weren't really hurting anything that I needed.
Okay, good.
But they got to stop again now, so it's time to plant again. They can't have all my crops, but so I think that was a good practice. But I think the unintended consequence was bringing deer in on a large scale.
Oh, really?
All the hunters around here like caught their limit this year,
Yeah.
which for the last few years they've gone home with one or two. So the herd has just exploded here in the last. I don't know what the other factors are, but perhaps calling in the hunt master has helped out the hunters as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I think probably one of the functions of that spirit is
Totally.
definitely.
Yeah,
And
my neighbors hunt for, I don't, some of them hunt to fill up their freezer with food for the family, and some of them hunt just for fun. But I feel like it's partially my job to talk to the land spirits for them because I don't think they're necessarily the most reverent to the animal spirits and to the land. And I almost feel like after they're done, I have to go and say, I'm sorry for these guys. They don't know what they're doing. Please forgive them or whatever and accept the
Yeah.
suffering.
Sometimes hunters are surprisingly aware and have the reverence. Some
Some
of
of,
them definitely not, but like I was surprised
I'm
by
not speaking about
that.
hunters in general. I just mean my buddies that do this are various levels of awareness, where some are very aware and some are, it's just my hobby.
yeah. I have found though that I'm a hunter and I found that hunting is a really fantastic way for just for meditation, but also for connecting with the land and with that place because you're just sitting there. The way I hunt is I sit there with my back against a tree with a shotgun for hours.
And you have to quiet your mind if you're going to have the animals come towards you. They can hear a loud mind.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I think a lot of hunters get a lot out of that sitting there and being quiet.
Right.
I think I have a friend that sits in his deer stand for hours on end, and I don't know how aware he is of, or he's been doing it for years. I've never talked to him about his spirituality.
There's also sometimes they might not see it as spirituality or they might not see it as meditation, but for them it's an intensely personal practice
Yeah.
that fills that function.
Yeah. Yeah. I can be a little critical of people's land use methods.
Yeah. And some people just drink the whole time and
Yeah. Yeah.
just shoot for fun. Yeah.
I have hunted deer. I wouldn't even call it hunting because it's almost, especially in the beginning of rifle season here, it's almost, they just give themselves to you. They're like out
Yeah.
there eating your crops, and I'm like, Sorry, buddy," but I wouldn't. I've tried to do what you do, where I sit there all day, and I am not. I don't do not have the patience for it.
But it's definitely it's like it's hard.
Yeah.
But
And it's cold, and yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it's cold. But it's kind of like to me it is like a meditation retreat
totally.
the thing because I kind of like being a little
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, he likes meditation.
It's that kind of a thing. It's like a challenge also.
But it's like that. It's like that Nordic practice, utseti, sitting out too,
Yeah.
Exactly.
out in the
Right.
cold. I do like to do that. I like
Yeah.
to sit out in the cold in my backyard and
Mhm.
meditate on like a winter night when I dress warmly enough to sit there for a while.
Yeah.
But an hour and a half tops is about what I can do.
Yeah, I don't go all day. I just do a few hours, like
Yeah.
an hour or
I
two
just been-
until if I
Do
get
like
deer,
morning
then
and then at evening. Yeah.
yeah.
that has been a really powerful practice to connect with land spirits too, to just sit out at night in various weathers and quiet your
Mhm.
mind and reach it out, reach your mind out to see what you pick up on. And you get some really cool things about that, about like just I feel like you connect with the ancient consciousness of the land in a way that's really hard to put into words. Because I think some of those things you connect with don't really do words. You,
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And like really the only way to connect with them is just to be there and to be aware and
To
conscious.
listen.
yeah, yeah.
One time I was doing a like a ritual by the hawthorn tree that is like our grandmother hawthorn that's like your oak. And I had my eyes closed for a while, and when I opened them, not 6 feet away from me was a young buck drinking water out of the stream that runs under the hawthorn.
Cool.
And I was like, I sat with him. He didn't notice me for so long. And then I was getting eaten by the bugs. And so I like sparked up my sage bundle again. And he was like, got a whiff of it. And he did that dramatic, like, and hopped away into the forest, like making that loud noise that they do.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting deer experience I had here on the land.
We've hawthorns here too, and we have,
Nice.
yeah, they smell wonderful in the spring. We also have
Yeah.
wild plums, which I know that the blackthorn is a really important plant to like European witchcraft.
Mhm.
I think our wild plum is fairly equivalent.
Oh, cool.
It,
Yeah. Same
it's
genus too.
the same genus and same kind of wild plum thing, and they're also incredibly thorny.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I've wanted to make wands out of the wood. So I haven't done it yet, but I want to. I make wands out of hazels. We have
Mhm.
American filberts here, and I make wands for Solomonic practitioners and cut them on the right election.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah,
Love that.
Yeah, that's important. So, what advice would you give to young cunning farmers, people who are getting into farming and magic in the same time, or vice versa? People who are farmers who want to be magicians, magicians who want to be farmers.
I would tell a farmer that wanted to be a magician. I think that my advice in general is to make sure you form a relationship to the spirits of your land, like I give in the first chapter of the book. I just make offerings, give them something, go out there and talk to them. Just say, "Here I am. Here I am. I want to have relate." Ask them for signs, for permission, for coming into the
Mm.
land. If you're going to go for a walk in the woods, my kids and I do that. We go for a walk in the woods, and we're like, "You spirits of the land, please give us permission." And we just quiet our minds for a minute and just see what comes to us. It never says no. They seem to be very open to having us go there. And I bring an offering if I can. I always carry around. I grow rustica tobacco here,
Mhm.
and I try to bring a handful of that to give to the sacred trees and to the spirits when I enter the land. Yeah, so that's my first advice, and advice to magicians that want to be farmers. I The whole book is full of that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting started with farming is a whole nother thing, and you have to find a piece of land and just start experimenting and read everything you can. And farming and magic are definitely two incredibly compatible but very different disciplines. Yeah. For a farmer who wants to deepen their practice, I would say get involved with seasonal observations as well. Make offerings, seasonal observations, because the wheel of the year is so important. The solstices, the equinoxes, and the cross quarter days. Even though that 8 festival calendar is a 20th century artifact of neo-paganism, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
And as a tropical astrologer, it fits right in with with tropical astrology.
Yeah.
Ptolemy enshrined the quarters and the four directions into the triplicity system, into the elements, and it's all so important. So observing the entry of the signs into the four cardinal of the sun into the four cardinal signs is really important, and those are all major festivals. That's a thing in the Golden Dawn too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Those ceremonies,
Yeah.
equinox.
And then the cross quarter days are important to Celtic mysticism, but those are the midpoint between the cardinal signs. And when you're at 15 Capricorn and 15 Aquarius and 15, anyway, I could reason it out. 15 Virgo and Leo. No, Virgo.
It would be 15 yeah, Leo. 15 degrees
Oh,
Leo.
yeah,
Yeah.
so all those are major Celtic holidays too. I just recently was looking at my wife's chart. She just recently had a birthday, which her birthday's February 8th, and I was like, "Hey, your birthday is the actual astronomical Candlemas, Imbolg."
Oh, cool.
There's like astronomical and there's astronaut, and that's
Yeah.
the exact midpoint.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I've been reading Nigel Pennick.
Oh yeah, he's cool too.
Yeah, and he does a lot with the local time and the like with the sundials and the using the natural measurements and how different like this local time is from the clock time.
Wow.
But it is based on these like the solstice point with the sun. Like that's how you find out the local sun, the local directions for your local place.
Yeah.
And it's very important. Like we have all these megaliths that are aligned to solstice equinoxes, constellations, stars, and I think that's just so important. And I feel like also the equinoxes and solstices and cross quarter days, even if there is this modern neo-pagan invention, they're the structure that goes back to before recorded history.
So yeah, totally. And another thing I wanted to add with the advice to somebody who wants to get into this, I would look into the local lore,
Yeah.
your local sacred sites. I would advise anybody to go to the local sacred sites if they're open to the public. If they're not, you might want to think about getting permission to them. Around here, we have the Hopewell and Adena sites in Ohio. We have ones in Kentucky. Um, I try to get, there's some Adena sites that have been destroyed that are really important to me personally, but they're on private land. And I actually haven't asked for permission from the landowners to go there, but I know where they were and I try to get as close as I can on public property whenever I can because it makes me feel good to be around them. I
Yeah.
would look into your local folklore, find out who the traditional people of your land are, if and to pay some respect for that to them in
Mm.
devotions and perhaps get to know them. That's something I haven't done yet. I would really like to connect with the indigenous people. That one of our local sacred sites is the Serpent Mound, and that's only 2 hours from here. And they hold ceremonies on the solstices and equinoxes because the sun sets over. I believe it sets over the serpent's head on the summer solstice.
Mm.
And so they have people from the local indigenous nations come out and they have a big ceremony there. Unfortunately, the solstice is one of the busiest times of the
Yeah.
year for me as a farmer. And we're right in the thick of harvesting garlic, which is one of our most important and labor intensive crops.
Yeah.
So we can't make it to that, but I would advise people to do things like that, to go there and
Yeah. Any
go.
warnings too, like when you're starting to open up to messages from land spirits who maybe are angry or to other and like ancestors like who maybe are angry? Do you have you ever had any experiences that left you scared or something like that? Or do you have any warnings for people who are just getting into this on how to protect themselves or
I do my protection as just a daily part of my daily practice, and I've not really had any negative
yeah.
experiences. I've gotten a little freaked out before occasionally, but no, I feel like what I've run into here has been very benevolent and
Mhm.
has appreciated my giving it attention. What I've
Yeah.
do here. No, I don't think I've had any negative experiences. I feel like going offering devotions with a kind heart, and I know my land has some history of. I don't know about my place in particular, but I know the area has had some bad stuff happen here, and which we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like
Yeah.
very much at home on my place.
So having that foundation of your daily practice of protection and then your intention of coming in by offering and paying respects, like I feel like, yeah, that's a good way to go.
I went to the waiver, and another thing people want to check out is paranormal sites. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
exactly sacred. I went to the Waverly Sanatorium, which is supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the country, for an overnight one time. And again, I do my protections. I might have even overprotected myself because I wanted to see something. And I went up by myself on the upper floors that were supposed to be the most haunted and sat there in the dark by myself. And I never felt it's not that I didn't feel anything. It's
Hmm.
that I felt peaceful.
Okay.
I didn't feel anything scary ever. I felt like I felt totally safe and at home there. And I felt on my place the hairs stand up on the back of my neck
Hmm.
before, which,
Hmm.
like I said, I've gotten freaked out before, but it's not really threatening. And I didn't have any of that at that supposedly very haunted place. But I feel like the hairs on the back of your neck is a sign of presence more than anything. And
Yeah.
I did lose my hat at the Waverly Sanitarium,
Mm.
leave offerings there very discreetly for the spirits, and I did hear some weird noises, some definitely some
Yeah.
noises, but
Yeah,
you
you
know,
do actually. This brings up a question I had too about you talk about how the dead ancestors or people who have died on a land that they love or that they have unfinished business might stay there and become an entity that's almost divine. Can you talk about the difference between a ghost and a person that's been there for centuries watching over land?
I don't know. There's a whole lot of difference. A lot of ancient people believed in different parts of the soul. So
Yeah.
maybe a ghost is a different part of the soul than somebody who's chosen to dwell within the land. The ancient Romans talked about the demones and the divine dead, the deified dead, who are somewhere between gods and ancestors.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of overlap between them and the Fae in Celtic
Uh-huh.
countries. The the people in the Celtic countries talk about the Aes mounds, and
Mhm.
the mounds there, as here, are where people were buried, and the people that are buried there become guardians of the land, and they stay and become protectors. So there's a whole lot of overlap between the deified ancestors and the Fae. I don't really know how they're different, but
Mm.
I feel like even though they've wiped out the mounds here, the physical mounds, like those people are still here. And I even think people who never had a mound built, who are just buried in the cemetery nearby, but lived out here on the local farms, are on some level still with them. And everybody around here is a strict Baptist, and they firmly believe that their people are in heaven. And I think that's true to an extent. I think when you pass, and not to get too metaphysical, you go into the province of the mind. You go into some sort of in between realm that's mind space, and you go where you think you're going to go, or where you think you deserve to go. Your experiences very much would color some of that, but I think on some level you can stay behind too if that's what you want to do and look after your family or your land. I feel like I've definitely felt I've run into people that used to live on the farms around here, that used to live there, that care very much about the place
Mhm.
and don't really want to leave. And
Yeah.
they have, in my weirder visionary states, told me that they are not alone there and that other people from other cultures are there too. And that there's a little community of dead people within the land out there. And I don't know. That's my own personal gnosis.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
You know?
Yeah, this has been awesome. Went a little bit over time, but
I knew we would.
Yeah.
this is a great book and congratulations on it. How can people find out about the book and follow your work?
Okay, I'm working on my website. We should get it up by March 17th by the time the book releases. If people want to make a note of it, and if people listen to this podcast, I guess you're not probably not going to air this right away. So my
Yeah.
website is thecunningfarmer.com. And then I have a Substack, which is thecunningfarmer.substack.com. And they have a little website that they put together for your writing. So those are the two best places. I also am on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't do a whole lot with those, but I have been checking them in the last month so people can reach out and get in touch with me through those too. 'Cause Substack is if you want to hear what I'm up to right now. I try to publish a blog once every week or two, or at least a couple times a month, and it's all free. I have archives that are accessible by paid subscribers. If you want to contribute to the work that I do there, you can become a member on Substack. That'd be great. I really appreciate that.
Mhm.
You can message me through that Substack as well if you want to get in touch with me. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to. I'm doing research on another book right now about rustic deities and agrarian paganism, for lack of a better word, some of the stuff that I'm talking about. And I don't know when I'm going to get to write. I've started taking notes on that. And that's another project I've got going on. And then
Awesome.
we're planting and I'm getting ready to plant stuff outside tomorrow.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Todd.
Hey, thank you so much. Hey, thank you guys for having me. It was really great talking to you. I knew it would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Cheers.
All right.